Hey everyone, it's Bernardo here. Hope you're well. Thank you for joining us today. So we're live here on Facebook, and for some of you that have registered today also for this webinar and podcast called Inspiring People. So I'm very excited to have a conversation today with a real pro. His name is David Fagan. He's the former CEO of Guerrilla Marketing, which sold over 23 million books in 62 languages all over the world, as well as the former owner of LCO Communications, a Beverly Hills PR firm that represented 58 Academy Award winners, 34 Grammy winners, and 43 New York best time sellers. David is a best-selling author for several books, including Word Genius, What to Say and How to Say It, Guerrilla Parenting, How to Raise an Entrepreneur, Cracking the Icon Code, How to Become an Icon in the Industry through Your Advice, Image, and Expertise, and From Invisible to Invincible, How to Make Your Presence Felt. David, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
David, you must have started when you were 10, because I mean, you've got an amazing, you've got an amazing career. You've done so many things.
Thank you. I'm older than I look. The years have been kind to me.
Yeah, well, good for you. Well done. Share that as well. One of the things that I wanted to kind of point out here, so I've known David for quite some time. I think kind of we have a lot of mutual friends, speakers, colleagues, and his name has come up so many times, and so many times we were trying to connect, and either he was in a different part of the world, or I was, and when I was in England, he was in LA. When I was in LA, he was in England.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes. So we've always missed and struggled to work with each other, but finally we got together only recently, actually. And but David, I've been following your career, personally, what you do, and I had the pleasure of kind of seeing you speak a little while ago, and I've got to say, you are really an extremely congruent guy, obviously, because it's what you do for a living. But you're congruent with what you speak, with how you speak. And obviously your branding is second to none, so as someone that promotes a lot of people and has promoted a lot of people over the years, I think this is one of the struggles that I normally say is that there's such a lack of congruency with what people are trying to actually express, say that they do, and then it just doesn't become a reality.
Yeah, absolutely. There's that message to market match that you want. That's said by quite a few people, including Joel Bauer, but message to market match. And it is a little bit tricky. What do you love? What are you really good at? And what will people pay you money for? You're trying to line up those things. What do you love? What are you good at? And what will people pay you for? And so, when you can align the stars, there's a lot of power in that, but it can be tricky for us entrepreneurs who have a lot of different talents and a lot of different ideas, and sometimes shiny object syndrome. And so we're out there doing a lot, and that can affect our branding for sure.
So what does it take, to be that congruent? What does it take, for someone to be able to kind of really stand out, in this very, fragmented, challenging industry that needs experts? Yeah. And we'll get into the specifics of where we are currently now, but I'm saying generally, what does it take?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, you just have to have a mindset of some very specific ideas and concepts. And there are ideas and concepts that probably won't come naturally to us. But you have to ask yourself, are you in the advice business? Do you make money off the advice you give, the expertise that you have? Doctors, attorneys, real estate agents, coaches, trainers, speakers, authors. You're really making money off the advice you're giving, the expertise that you're communicating and sharing. And if you are in the advice business, you really are the product. And that means that, you're really marketing yourself more than you're marketing anything else. So a lot of companies that have, products, they have something that is packaged and sits on a shelf. That's an entirely different business when it's actually us giving advice. So people want to know, who are you? What qualifies you? And there's this really popular 2-word question that people are either thinking and not saying, or they're literally saying it, Bernardo. And that question is, why you? right? You know, why should I hire you? Why should I read your book instead of someone else's book? Why should I go to your event instead of someone else's event? Why should I get onto your Zoom video conference or Facebook Live instead of somebody else's? We all have a limited amount of time and resources. And so they kind of need to know why you. And so, you know, in answering your question, you got to think about those things and answer those questions. And some of the more popular answers are things that qualify you to be somewhat of that icon in your industry or celebrity expert. You know, writing a book, having testimonials, having endorsements, you know, winning awards, being featured in the media, being featured on stage. You know, maybe you serve on a board of advisors or directors, but all of these types of things are independent third-party social proof that kind of says why your advice maybe versus something else or someone else or somewhere else.
And you talk about the two word question that people need to be able to answer. What is the question and why is it important?
Yeah, well, that's what we're talking about now. It really is that why you. You know, why you? And I know that we get really excited about our creativity and our talent. Like I love to write, I love to create visual aids, write books, create courses. I mean, if I could do nothing but that, I would just do that. My ego is not fulfilled by being on the media or being on stage, maybe contrary to some people's popular belief, but I'm really, believe it or not, more of an introvert. But I've realized that I have to understand that people are asking that question. They have so many options of how they spend their time and money that I have to answer the question, why me? People are saying, David, why you? David, why your book? David, why your event? And we all have to realize that. You know, all right, Bernardo, why you? Why should I come to the Best You? I mean, everything on your website, everything in your videos, when you're talking about your Best You Expo, you're essentially telling them why this is worth their time and money. And sometimes, almost all the time, there's something else going on that's competing for that time and money. And so just starting with the knowledge that people are asking that question, why you, gives you that mindset of, okay, I've got to come up with a good answer for this. You know, and the people who are the most successful are the people who can answer that question really well. You know, who makes the most money? The real estate agent that's been around for 20 years and has this amazing team, or the best marketed real estate agent? You know, who makes the most money? The chiropractor that has all the fancy degrees and they've done it for years and years and years, and you know, they've studied internationally and nationally and they have tons of offices, or the best marketed chiropractor? It's always the best marketed. I mean, even in books, you know, which book sells the most? Is it the book that is the most well-written, like Oxford Dictionary level, expressed, communicated, or is it the best marketed book? And that marketing always starts with why this book, why this event, why you? And, you know, you've got to have answers for those questions. And so that's the mindset I want people to think of when they're in an advice business. You know, you're an expert, you're an advisor, hopefully you're a trusted advisor, you know, and there's other people that do what you do. And there's enough out there for everyone. This isn't so much about competition, but you do have to compete a little bit for people's time and money and interest.
And I'm going to jump in now to kind of where we are, you know, with the current situation, obviously, with you know, everything going on, and because all of a sudden, I think pretty much everyone's reality is a new one. You know, look, hey, there were a lot of people that, you know, their realities just got brighter. You know, anyone that was doing face masks or you know, hand sanitizers, or you know, who was
right,
toilet rolls to the supermarkets. You know, these guys are like, you know, 20 days, 30 days orders. You know, so now. But for those of us that, you know, kind of, even if we did have, or we have a kind of an established business, but now all of a sudden, you know, we really need to really pay. What do we do? And so I want to talk about two aspects. One is those that were thinking of maybe transitioning, you know, those that have been standing on the fence for quite some time, maybe thinking that they want to get into personal development. Maybe they want to stand out. They want to become an expert. They want to share their expertise, but they haven't taken action. This could probably, obviously, should be a wake-up call. So what's your thoughts on that, on holding back now? Because a lot of people are holding back because they're scared, holding back because they don't want to take action, because they want to hold on to their money, because there's just so much uncertainty. What's your take on this?
Well, now is a time for quite a bit of opportunity, and I can very much understand the natural inclination to be careful. And I would even advise people to be careful, but we should always be careful. But more importantly, there's an opportunity to understand that although there's a little bit less money in the marketplace, so many times the money doesn't entirely disappear, it just shifts. So where is that money shifted to? Like you just pointed out, there's some industries now that are they're doing phenomenal. And the money's just shifted. Even the technology we're using right now, Zoom, right, is doing extremely well. A lot of other people that were into video conferencing are now, finding this massive demand to the points where they cannot grow fast enough. There are various types of stores that are going really quickly. There are various type of manufacturing that's gotten really in demand. There's even inventions and patents that the government has come out and said, hey, can you kind of speed up the R&D here? But I think for most of us that are in the advice business, which is what we're talking about, today a lot, is there's a massive opportunity for people who feel like, hey, I've got time. They probably always had some time, but right now they feel like, hey, I have time. I'm not sitting in traffic. I'm not sitting in a car. I'm not going into an office as much. I'm limited. I can't go to the movie theater. I can't shop. I can't go out to restaurants. So I've got time. And, now's a time for them to leverage those free moments to learn more. And that's what a lot of people are doing. There's people who wanted to take up hobbies. I've got people who do things like just teaching piano online. I've got people who have done things like teach your dog new tricks online. All these cool, different, wild things you never think of. People are getting into. Like even me, I've wanted to learn how to play the piano myself. And I'm like, man, I'm going to sit here and look at YouTube videos about, how to do certain things online. So for you that's in the advice business, for you that's an expert, there's an opportunity here for you to access that. One of the things that we've done in the past is a teen entrepreneur summer camp. I don't really market it. I don't really advertise it. It's a big camp in California, been featured in Forbes magazine. It's with teenagers who want to be entrepreneurs. I got a call out of the blue or a text out of the blue this morning just saying, hey, are you going to be doing more teen entrepreneur conferences? And I hadn't even thought of that. I'm not even advertising that. But here's all these kids that are home, supposedly doing school online, supposedly. We'll see how that's going. And parents are looking for other things for them to do. So I'm just throwing out examples of other markets that are opening up, and the money and opportunities didn't go away, but they did shift. And the people who can figure out where they shifted to and what money's available for those people are going to do fairly well.
And it's exactly that, isn't it, David? So you're literally using your skills that you already have, and you're simply adapting to the new reality and to find, who could you serve in this time. So now, and I want to bring into this now, all of a sudden, like, you open your Instagram and your Facebook and you've got the little red screens all over the place because everyone's live. Everyone and their cats and dogs are live. So now it's all of a sudden got very competitive on the online platform because, which Facebook live shall I watch? So there's just 6 going on right now. So I suppose part of it with that is linking to, okay, how can I take this downtime to, for example, create content? Because I do believe that, there's a, and I do want to talk about JVs afterwards, and obviously something that you've promoted very heavily over the years. But how easy or how difficult is it to create online content?
I think it can be pretty easy. I'll give you an example. You can start off with a belief you have. Take anything that you believe in, and kind of put some words to it. Like find out how you would quote it. Like how would you phrase it? For example, I'm not a big fan of dreamers, which I think is a little bit controversial, which is also good. I'm more of a fan of doers. And so how might I word that? I kind of said, well, dreaming is good, but doing is better. Dreaming is good, doing is better. So I just created a quote here. Dreaming is good, doing is better. I created that years ago. But now I could write an article about dreaming is good, doing is better. That article could become a chapter. Those chapters could become a book. That quote, dreaming is good, doing is better, that I came up with just by forming my belief, could be added onto a picture of me. That's a meme. It could be turned into a slide. Slides are going to make a presentation. So it can be pretty easy. Start with a belief, turn it into a quote, turn the quote into an article, turn the article into a chapter, turn the article chapter into a slide, turn chapters and slides into a presentation or into a book. You can turn books into courses. I could turn that quote into a video. I could get on Facebook Live and just say, hey, I just wrote an article called Dreaming is Good, Doing is Better. Let me tell you what I mean by that. There's not a lot of value to dreamers. Anyone can dream. It's the doers. It's the people who take massive amounts of action. I can get on there and just expand on that. So creating content can be pretty easy. But what you really got to think about is there really isn't a whole lot of value to knowledge anymore. It used to be knowledge is power. Knowledge really isn't power anymore. If you want knowledge, just get on Google. Everything's on Google, right? We just find YouTube, Facebook, whatever. Really, wisdom is power, right? And wisdom is, the idea that some truths have greater value. What truth has the greatest value? And how do you implement those truths? How do you teach those truths? A lot of people are coming out and saying, hey, I've got a new course. Now, you don't have a new course. You've got a workbook. Nothing wrong with a workbook, but a workbook to me really isn't a course. A course is a workbook, it's PDFs, it's visual aids, it's tests, it's homework, it's assignments, it's video. That's a course. So what we're seeing right now is a lot of people are rushing to create content, and everybody wants content. Smart TV networks and stations want content and shows. Social media networks want content, right? Content. So not all content is created equal. Not all books are created equal. Before it was like, hey, good is good enough. Just have a book. Good is good enough. Just have a workbook. Good really isn't good enough anymore. You do the best you can with what you have to work with, Bernardo. Start with whatever you can possibly do, but just realize that in the coming months, there is already a massive amount of content and more of it coming all the time. Udemy, huge, massive amounts of books, something like 11, 12,000 new books put up every month on Amazon. If you're going to create something new, you're going to have to make it compelling. You're going to have to make it interactive. And people want to engage super learning. So you got to start becoming a super teacher, a super professor. One of the things we've spent a lot of times researching is just how do people learn? And we don't all learn the same. We don't all learn from reading. If most of our entrepreneur friends learned from reading, they would have stayed in school, right? They would have stayed in college. But most people got out of school and got out of college because they wanted to be an entrepreneur, mostly because they didn't learn that way. They learned through seminars and conferences and face-to-face and being an apprentice. So how are you going to create content that is going to help people learn from all kinds of backgrounds?
And I want to talk to you about books, and this is kind of something I was sharing yesterday myself, actually, about, partnerships and working together. And I think, if anything is coming from what's going on at the moment is how many people are coming together to collaborate, to work. I know it's something that you've obviously, been doing a long time and encouraging, J joint ventures. I particularly, obviously, with us, with the Best You Expo, has always been about that. It's about combining forces. You can run an event and you can have, 5 speakers and maybe 100 people. But if it's 150 of us, then all of a sudden we're going to get tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
So obviously, I think we're in a different time now as well, where collaboration is king. Also because we need to join forces because, unfortunately, financially, some companies will struggle and some people will not have the resources to build an online platform or to run a big event. So share some insights and your experiences on joint ventures working together, collaborating.
Yeah. Well, there's people that already have a platform. I'm like, you've built an amazing platform yourself. And a lot of people don't understand how much time and money that takes to develop and support and create and maintain. So one of the, some of the advice I would give people is, look, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Find people like you, Bernardo, and, create courses and get them on that platform. Now you might say, well, David, why? Well, your platform probably doesn't have a lot of traffic, you, the listener right now, if you're just starting out, if you're just creating a platform. But, if you can get on someone like your platform, Bernardo, you've got all these faculty, experts, people putting content. So maybe they're there to watch my Publishing Genius course, or maybe they're there to learn from you. And they see something else. That's what you really want. And that's why, Facebook and all these other places are trying to get content because they're hoping that while you're there, you're going to run across something else. Essentially, we as a public, we made Kindle and Amazon what it is. And, we all decided, hey, let's go put our books on Kindle. Well, guess where everyone goes to look for a book now? On Kindle. So, that's where we're putting it. So there's kind of the sweet spot of, I don't want it on necessarily a brand new platform maybe that I just created, but I also want to look for other ways besides just the big Amazon Kindle where I'm lost in the shuffle, right? So I want a place where there's some traffic, but there's just not so much overwhelming traffic that it's hard for me to be found. But those are some ideas to get people thinking about not just creating good content, but more importantly, where am I going to put this content so I can be found?
Brilliant. And then, David, when it comes down to writing books, obviously, it's safe to say you've done extremely well. You can walk your talk, and you obviously, I know you share a lot of expertise around books and publishing books and helping people. Now, I think you were saying that there's 5 different types of books, and
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up because a lot of people don't understand the different ways that content takes place. So just for books, for example, there's really 5 different types of books, and there's really a reason for each type of book. And so you want to understand that so that you use that type of book the right way. For example, an ebook is the easiest thing to make a bestseller on Amazon, right? You can knock it down to 99 cents. You can make it available to a lot of people. If you know what you're doing with keywords and categories, relatively speaking, it's not very hard to make it a bestseller. So that's something that's really good for ebooks. No printing cost. Digital, you can get it out to a lot of people, really easy to make a bestseller. So you definitely want to have an ebook version of your book. You definitely want to have a paperback version. The paperback version is the cheapest to print. The paperback version is the cheapest to get out there in terms of low printing costs. The more you print, probably the cheaper it can get. And paperback a lot of time is what I would call good is good enough. But then you got a hardback book, third type of book, hardback book. A hardback book, I wouldn't print a lot of those, but when it comes to getting featured on the media, when we do a lot of PR and press, I've been on Fox News a ton, Neil Cavuto, Fox and Friends, What's Happening Now. I've even been on the Today Show. I'm not sending them a paperback book. I'm sending them a nice hardback book, dust cover, that wraps around it. If I'm talking to a big event or convention, that's really where I'm sending the more expensive hardback books. And those hardback books, they can be 2 to 3 times the cost as a paperback book, but it's good to have some of those. The 4th type of book is really a workbook. A workbook is what you can sell for the most money. So ebook, only 99 cents, paperback book, maybe $15 to $25. Hardback book, maybe it's $29.99, maybe $39.99. That's really high. But a workbook you could sell for $99. You might even sell it for more than that. So the workbook is more interactive. There's tests, there's homework, there's assignments in it. You want to write your book and keep it pretty normal and simple. And then you want to take that same book and just go to the end of every chapter and create some homework, create some assignments, create some tests, some self-assessment tests. And you easily turned your book into a workbook, and the workbook will sell for more. And then the 5th book that you want to have, 5th type of book, version of book, is your audiobook. And the advantage of the audiobook is that's really how most people are consuming content nowadays. They want to turn it on, maybe they want to speed it up. Some people don't even realize that when you're listening to books online, you can actually go 2x, 3x, 4x, you can just really learn quickly. And so if you really want people to get through most of your content, because most books that are being read, people get through maybe the first 3 chapters, 30 pages, that's about it. Audiobooks are getting consumed more. More of the content is getting experienced and learned. So you got an ebook, a paperback book, a workbook, a hardback book, and an audiobook. And all of those types of books are just different versions of the same content. And if you have all those things, man, now shoot a few videos and you got yourself a course. But think about that in terms of creating content. And you maybe already wrote a book, but you just need to turn it into a workbook. Or maybe you already have a workbook and book, but maybe you just need to sit down and record it and make it an audiobook. So those are some easy ways to think about content creation.
Brilliant. And I've got to say, I'm a massive fan of audiobooks, and I know a lot of the publishers are very keen on that now only. I mean, I've even been hearing, people, well, some publishers that simply want the audio book rights, even though they're not that interested on the physical, not all of them. And I believe there's a level of connection that you have with an audiobook that you don't have with obviously kind of a physical book. So I'm a massive fan of that. And also, again, it's even, a lot of people don't understand all the ins and outs of working with a big publisher and understanding that you still have to pay for your books, because they still have to be printed and so there's a lot of insights. And I know you've got massive expertise there, and I highly kind of recommend, obviously, if you're going to be working with someone. And I've seen this a lot. I've seen a lot of publishers and a lot of people that tell you how you can write a book, but then if you ask them which was their bestseller, they probably couldn't point it out. So, that's the difference.
Well, yeah, and one of the things that I would discourage people from doing, and this might be discouraging in itself, and I don't mean it this way, but although you got to do the best you can with what you have to work with, I totally agree with that. You really have to raise your bar on books nowadays. It's so competitive out there. Good is no longer good enough, and not all books are created equal. Not all courses are created equal. And I guarantee you, the market was already being flooded with content. Now I'm just seeing it in massive amounts. Wow. Even like you were mentioning, Facebook Live right now, there's probably, 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 people that we know of. They're doing Facebook Live right now, right? How are you going to rise above that? How are you going to separate yourself? And it's going to be through, being diverse in that creation, really talking about super learning, being a super teacher, visual aids, graphs, charts, infographics, research, breakdowns, video, self-assessment tests, homework, assignments. I know that I mentioned this a little bit before, but I'm going to harp on it a little bit because that's how I'm even recommending things. People saying, well, David, why'd you recommend this instead of this? And I just said, well, quite simply, there's just more value there. And once I tell them, hey, look at these self-assessment tests, or hey, look at these visual aids, or hey, look at these templates or forms. Man, that is just a fast way to separate yourself from everyone else. You have to look at your content is really a blueprint to a franchise, right? What makes McDonald's and all these other places so great is everything's a checklist. Everything's a form, everything's a formula, everything's done. It's what they would call turnkey. You've got to make your information similar, especially if you're teaching people how to make money, save money, lose weight, get in better shape. I mean, all these types of hot topics. It needs to be very turnkey. Think about what's in your head and how do I get it on the screen so that it's very interactive and will help people that learn in various ways.
And I've got to point out, boys and girls, whoever's listening, that, a lot of the things that David has mentioned there quite quickly, one after the other, are absolutely essential. And if you look at, for me, it's always about modeling the best, who are the best and what are they doing? There's so many people out there that you can learn from. But a lot of the things that, David was saying are things that I hope you've made notes because they are key. And, I've got to say a lot of the times when I've seen, your visual aids and when I've seen a lot of the things that even your slides, when you share them on stage, I think they really, really stand out. And I have to say that because it's true. I'm not bringing it up for no other reason. So I understand the importance. And then I wanted to bring now the idea of obviously you're a communicator as far as that, you love a headline and you're always checking the news and seeing what headlines out there. I could use that. Now, you've obviously written and you write great copy and, great subject lines and emails. It's all key. Everything's important because it is part of communication. For me, I wanted to talk to you about being a speaker and obviously, standing out as a speaker because what I tend to share is that I find it quite fascinating. And there's nothing wrong, don't get me wrong, not everyone has to speak about their book, but I do find it quite fascinating that there's a lot of experts out there that have never spoken about their book. They've just simply written it. And my feedback and my 2 cents is that I've always got so much feedback and so much information when I've gone on stage and I've discussed and shared the ideas of a work in progress, i.e. my book, because I've always got some great feedback, which then allows me to improve what has become a reality. But if anything, reinforces my message when I'm speaking, So what's your thoughts as a speaker, communicating, engaging, because you're very engaging as well when you're on stage, David. How do you do that, and what's the difference that makes a difference?
Yeah. I would simplify things a lot down into what I would call feelings that people need to feel in order to move forward. And, there's some core feelings that really help make it very easy for someone to decide to work with you, to read your book, to listen to you more, to buy your course. So, I talk about what to say and how to say it. A lot of it comes down to creating those feelings. Some people might say, oh, it's the experience you create. That's true. That's part of it. But I think you could be even more specific. So people should feel like you're the authority, when watching them. Okay. People should feel like, you're that expert, you know what you're doing. You've been around for a really long time. So that's a really important aspect to it. What are you doing as you're speaking so that they feel that, you're the authority? Some other feelings you want them to feel is that there's a perception of value. What slides are you creating? What information are you sharing? What are you doing to create a perception of value for your product, for your service, for your information? It's really important to understand that that's a feeling that they need to feel. If there's no value to it, then, I used to say people need to feel that you're likable. Nowadays, I'd say lovable. I mean, they need to really kind of fall in love with you a little bit. Think about your presentation in terms of, what slide is going to help me relate to them? What slide might show a likable or lovable side to me? What slide is going to show that I'm an authority? What slide is going to show that there's a perception of, value here? Think about those types of things. And sometimes I think people wing it, and I think that's okay in the beginning, maybe, but really sit down. If you want to be a very successful speaker, sit down and think about these types of feelings that exist and what you're going to do to create every feeling, on the list. There's 7 of them really, that you're the authority, they love you, you have a solution to their problem, the problem's duplicatable, that they can actually do what you do. Sometimes we impress people so much, people go, oh, I can never do what you do. Well, if you did that, then you kind of shoot yourself in the foot a little bit. Sure, there's a perception of value. Another one is that there's a sense of urgency. One of the last ones on the list, sense of urgency. Why do they need to do it now? Why should they do this now? And the last one, it makes sense. It clicks. Sometimes people explain things and teach things and they give them some kind of offer and it just doesn't make sense. Like I see a lot of people nowadays saying, oh, I have a $25,000 mastermind package and course, and you can get it for $1. Well, that doesn't make sense. I mean, it must not really be worth $25,000, right? Now, if you said to them, hey, I've got a brand new course coming out and I've got 7 of these sitting in my garage and I just want to get rid of them. It's still really good content. And so I used to sell it for tens of thousands. I'm just going to sell it for $100. Okay, that makes sense. But don't trust that they're going to figure that out on their own. You need to explain those things. So you're the authority, you're lovable, you have a solution, it's duplicatable, there's a perception of value, there's a sense of urgency, and it makes sense. If you focus on those feelings, right? If you focus on those feelings, you're going to be in really, really good shape as a speaker. And the same applies to your book. The same applies to your email. And you don't have to do all 7 feelings in every article or every chapter or every slide or every presentation. Just somebody seeing you as the authority, just somebody really loving you will open a lot of doors.
Yeah, being loved helps. And I also share, which I shared with you at the beginning, I think about being congruent and honest. I think being congruent, with who you are, who you say you are, and kind of when you share ideas either in your book or your message, I normally say that a lot of people should actually read their own book because they're amazing in their book, but then when you meet them in person, they're not the same individual. With now, what advice would you give people that are maybe thinking of creating content, but and we're saying I can feel it. I can feel there's so many people now because they haven't had time to think, they haven't had time to plan, they haven't had time to write. So there's a lot of creativity in action, which will become eventually will flog the market with all sorts of things. So what's your thoughts on what it is that people should create that is of value as far as a course? What are the best tips that people could create? So it's something that is of quality. And if anything as well, guide us if you have any ideas on what those best things are.
Yeah, I shared the screen. I put something here on the screen just to kind of show a little bit of even what I'm talking about, feelings felt. And this ties in to what you're asking right now. You know, the hardest part is just getting started. And so that's why I was breaking down earlier in the call, you know, what's a belief you have, and turn that belief into a quote, and turn that quote into an article, or and that article could be turned into a chapter. Another way to go about it, just getting started, is what's a story you have? You know, people are really intrigued by stories. What are your stories? Just make a list of your stories. How might you share those stories? Those stories is really what makes your content valuable, and it really makes it you. Because let's face it, there really isn't a whole lot of topics out there that haven't already been discussed. There's not a whole lot of topics that haven't already been written on. I mean, it's kind of all been done before. So how you make it uniquely yours is really your stories. So figure that out. And I'll add a third thing here. In addition to beliefs and stories, when it comes to creating content, you know, I talk quite a bit about visual aids. I've put a few of them up here on the screen. You can't see them too well, and that's by design. I don't want you to get hung up in any one visual aid right now. But here's the other thing to make content creation really easy. Start with creating the visual aid. You know, create a Venn diagram, you know, create a checklist, create a blueprint, create a workflow chart. Now, write about the visual aid. You just gave yourself something to write about, right? You created a visual aid. Now just explain the visual aid, right? So I put some visual aids up here on my screen. You know, if I brought up a visual aid, now I can just sit there and write about that. I could just sit there and I could explain that visual aid. Like, you know, here's what it is, here's why it is, you know, here's what it does, you know, here's where you start. But I literally gave myself something to write about, which is what helps us overcome that writer's block, that creative block. You know, you can get with a designer. There's a lot of
Sorry, David, I was going to say that I saw that one in your Facebook group the other day when your client asked you for if you can do it any cheaper. I love that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you take that good image, which is essentially just an idea, right? It's just essentially an idea, but now you build it out into something that is a whole chapter. You know, you build it out into something that's a whole article, right? But it hinges on that. And when you have an image, this works so good for social media because everyone's just kind of skimming through, right? And so they'll stop at an image. They'll stop at a visual aid. They'll stop at something that's going to teach them something very quickly. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm kind of a news junkie, and I don't know if you've noticed a lot of the news stories out there lately, but everything's a graph, right? Everything is a pie chart. Everything is a visual aid trying to break down what's happening and where it's happening and how it's happening, because that's how a lot of people consume content. We don't want to have to read 4 or 5 pages when one visual aid will just teach us something. And I think this is probably one of the, you want to be a super teacher and you want to have super learners and you want to be in content creation, start thinking about what are the ways that I can teach something very complex and make it very simple in a very short amount of time. That's really where the brilliance is, you know, and that's something that we should all be thinking about. You know, I might spend a couple hours just on one slide, but how much might that slide make me? How much might that visual aid make me? If that visual aid is a post that ends up getting me even only 4 or 5 leads and which turn into 1 or 2 phone calls and maybe turns into 1 client, you know, what is that worth it? Yeah, how much is that worth to me? And you got to think of it that way.
Yeah, great advice. Brilliant advice. And listen, I think there's so much to learn here when it comes down to standing out, you know, to making sure that you're above, you know, a lot of the things that are out there that unfortunately are not easily understood. And apart from that, you know, people just simply don't get and aren't great value. So,
yeah.
Brilliant. Well done. Okay. Thank you, David. So what I wanted to ask you next was around the idea of where you see us going next. And again, this is more about the current state of affairs of where we are at this moment. I get there's a lot of uncertainty, and kind of when we're looking at, oh my God, I've still got another month or maybe 6 weeks at home. When some of us have, I've been at this already at nearly 3 weeks to nearly 3.5 weeks. I've been kind of self-isolating. So where do you see this going? And I'm asking you for your professional opinion as a leader in the industry who's also have a business. You're adapting, and obviously you also have questions. But what's your global take in where we're going with this? Where is it going to go?
And are you talking more about terms of the marketplace or just kind of the world in general?
Yeah, well, I would probably start with the world in general, and then we can look at kind of the marketplace, because the world in general. I mean, I've got a friend of mine, who came into a Facebook Live we were doing last week. He's a good friend, and we have a lot of laugh, and we were just literally laughing at a lot of the stupidity that's out there, because hey, it is bad, it is concerning, it is terrible. But then we were talking about, hey, you know what? In World War II, our grandparents went to war for 4 or 5 years. They went to war at the age of 19. They were literally, in a very, very tough situation for 5 years. We're forced to stay at home watching Disney Plus, and eating lots of stuff in the fridge. So, okay, right. It is bad. So, I'm talking about how do you see it as general, as a society, and then what can we do, us in the industry to bring some reality back?
Yeah. I know. I was talking to my teenagers, and it's like, if I was a teenager, it's like, wait, I'm not allowed to go to school. I can't go to church. I have to stay inside. I have to play video games and watch Netflix. Like, this is what I have to do. It doesn't seem all that bad, does it? Relatively speaking, of course. Yeah, no, I'm not an overly optimistic person. I'm more cautiously optimistic, but I'm definitely not a cynical person either. And I think we're all trying to find that balance. I definitely think that it's worse than what some people say that it is. I don't know if the world will ever be the same again, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't know if the world will ever be the same again. I think this is going to last a lot longer than people are predicting. At first it was days and weeks, maybe a few months. I don't think that. Even if we do come back 2, 3, 4 months from now, meaning not so many restrictions, I don't even think the world is going to be real excited to accept it. A lot of the data I see, people aren't real excited to hustle back out to a ball game. They're not real excited to hustle back out to the movie theaters and things like that. So I think we're going to be like this, for 6 to 12 months. And in some ways, we're never going to be the same again. And although there's a lot of opportunity, certain marketplaces are going to get really, really competitive. And there's an expression of good times create bad policy. And what I mean by that is some of us might have kind of been a little bit in cruise control. We might have been a little bit spoiled. We were kind of ahead of the game. We were the top of our industry. Well, now there's a lot of people who have kind of wanted to do what we do, who have now been kicked off the ship in the corporate world. And guess what? They're entering our field. They're entering our industry. And if you think you're going to just sit back and do what you've always done and make good money, you're going to be horribly disappointed, because there is a lot of new people that are going to start doing what me and you do. They're going to start speaking. They're going to start writing. They're going to start creating. They're going to get on video. They're going to share their thoughts. They're going to share their ideas. And I'm happy for all of them. But it should be a wake-up call to some of us who have, quote unquote, been in the industry. You guys, all of us, I include myself, we've been maybe a little bit spoiled, and we've done a good job at what we've done. But what we've currently done over the last couple months and last couple years, whatever it might be, that's no longer going to work next month and next year. Like, you're going to have to really raise your game. You're going to have to really go next level, because instead of having thousands of people doing what you do in your area, you're going to have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. And so, really ask yourself, what can I do to go next level, to learn technology, to learn Zoom, to learn social media, to learn video, to become a better writer, to become a better content creator, to become a better teacher, to become a better learner, you're going to have to really raise your game if you want to do better, if you want to continue to even coexist at where you have been over the last couple of years. Is my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do think to a degree, it will take time for things to get back to whatever normal was. I am concerned about, how many phobics are going to come out of this, how many people with some serious issues are going to come out. Because I'm not being funny. This has been literally what, 2 weeks. I walked out to my terrace up here the other day, and I swear to God, I must have been at least 15 feet away, and I could see the fear in this couple's eyes that I was going to get close to them, like I had radiation, So and they've been stuck only for 3 weeks, so so to change that mindset is going to take time. I agree, but I do really believe that what people should be doing is definitely 100%. Yeah. Is focusing on learning those new things, and that's kind of where,
So Bernardo, this is how you're going to see Zoom calls pretty soon.
Yeah. I know. It's absolutely mad.
This is us out jogging now. This is us out jogging. And I mean, it's funny. Not funny. Like, it's crazy. It's like you would have normally seen somebody like this and you would have laughed at them. Even a month ago, I would have laughed at them. But now we're like, yeah, that seems about right. That sounds legit. Yeah, that guy seems to know what he's doing.
Yeah. But I think, and this is kind of one of the things that for me, obviously, because again, I'm a solution-driven guy. I mean, we've done with the Best You Online, we've got a lot of content. But what I'm looking at providing is teachings or learnings around the things that obviously, are important now, wealth management, investing in stock, diversifying, so things that, okay, well, I never knew about that, but guess what? I better learn quickly. And then, because, I was talking to someone who's a wealth management coach, and she was saying to me quite rightly, says, if you consider yourself a coach and a mentor and a trainer, how much of that do you actually spend giving people advice on wealth? And I said, none, nothing, never, because it wasn't my focus. My focus was on the mindset. But quite rightly, if there's no wealth, if there's no money in the bank account, guess what? It's completely irrelevant, because, having the mindset, you're going to feel terrible. So it is definitely a time for people to start learning. And I'm saying, pointed this out, quickly, pronto, very, very pronto. All right. So, David, any last things you want to share with us? And I'm going to be sharing some links here with David. Obviously, this is going to be recorded. We'll be sharing it on our podcast as well. We're putting out there as well. And I've shared your link. But is there anything in particular that you felt that, you wanted to share here today?
Yeah. One last thing I would share, although we need to up the level of the quality of our content, we don't need to give as much content as we might think. And so one of the things I still see a lot of is people working on this masterpiece, right? It's this 100,000 word, 200,000 word, manuscript. It's this, 100 hours worth of videos. I guess I would just leave you with the thought of it really doesn't need to be that, and people don't want that. So much of what people's expertise is out there can be divided up. Don't be afraid to have, a 30 to 60 minute course on video with a bunch of backup material. Don't be afraid to have 2, 3, 15 to 20 minute videos, like in the past, maybe it's like I have a huge course on content creation, and inside there I have visual aids and writing stories and feelings. Now I could go to just visual aids, and just within the world of visual aids talk about infographics, and I could do a course just on infographics, and that would be of value to somebody. So the idea that it's this huge monstrous thing that you got to create is really a myth. And so find ways to chunk down those ideas. Yes, they're still a part of something bigger that you want to have, but break it down. Like, so you talk about mindset. You could take 1 or 2 things on mindset, and create something that's 20, 30 pages long, create something that's, 2 or 3 videos, create something that has 1 or 2 self-assessment tests, and people are more likely to consume that, and buy it for less. There's places out there that are selling really short courses for $50, $10, $20. I'm used to selling things for thousands, but you'll get more people buying more content if you can make it shorter and easier and less expensive for them to kind of test you out. So just think about that moving forward. What's something small, still very powerful, still very quality, still very, backed up and sophisticated, but shorter, that you can get out there right now just to test the market and get some people experiencing you. Focus on that.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's great advice. And I think also we are going through a period where everyone is obviously very generous with their time, trying to contribute in whatever way they can to be of service and to help. Because, hey, listen, we all have to do that. But then on the other hand, I'm telling you, it's only a matter of time. There's going to have to be a time when everyone's going to have to say, you know what, I might need to get paid, to share my expertise, because you know what, I need to pay my rent eventually. So I'm just saying is there will be a turning point on this, as there is a turning point on everything. And this new reality is what it is. And if you are an expert, you need to sell your expertise, obviously. David, how can people find you?
I'm not too hard to find. davidtfagan.com. I've got a ton of websites. I mean, a lot of our event stuff is at the jvsalessummit.com, which is starting to go digital. We're going to do our JV event online here end of this month, April 27th through the 29th. There's a lot of information at jvsalessummit.com. Definitely want to have you be a part of that. But, you can Google David Fagan and you're probably going to get more things than what you want here. We've got talent support services. We got Top Talent Magazine. We got the goldlightuniversity.com. So we create quite a bit of content. That's something we tell people to do. You want different websites for different purposes. Don't try to put everything on one site. Some of the other content you should create is think about what are some of the other pages, that you really should have. Maybe you want just a super sign-up page. Maybe you want a website just for your event. Maybe you want a website just about you. Maybe you want a sales page just for something you offer. I highly encourage that. If we got time, I would share one other thought with you. Do we got one more minute?
Oh, go ahead.
I think something for people to think about and consider is really, what is your audience and what do you want your audience to be? What really is your ideal client? And I've got an image here that I share with people, and I'll share this kind of as the last thing. But a lot of times people will go create all this content, and they create it for an audience that they do not have access to, and they create it for people that they can't reach. Like they'll say, oh well. I want to do women at corporations. That's my ideal client. It's like, well, how many women do you know that are executives at corporations? Well, none. Well, how are you going to get a hold of them? I don't know. So I've kind of created this Venn diagram here, kind of practicing what I preach. What is your ideal client? Who's easy for you to find? Who's easy for you to connect with? And who has the money that's going to pay you? Like sometimes we also find clients that we love, like, oh, I want to help struggling artists. Well, the first word in that is struggling, right? So, how are they going to have the money to afford what it is that you believe you're worth? So just think about that too. Before you start going and creating a ton of content, who are you really creating it for? What database do you already have? What people are you easily coming in contact with? Who will refer you people? And how are you going to get to these people? Because again, creating content, that's half the battle. Like you just said, Bernardo, we got to go sell this content. And we got to make sure that it's as easy for us as we possibly can. So thank you for letting me share that one last thought with you. I know we're running.
That is brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. That's brilliant and very easily explained there. David, thank you so much, and thank you everyone that's been listening and watching here today. And look forward to seeing you soon, David. One day.
See you soon. Talk to you later.
Okay. All the best. Bye. Bye.